Hey guys, Alton here, and I want to welcome you to the very first episode of my newest series, Ethical Hacking for Beginners. So what's this series all about and why am I creating it? Well, this is a series to teach you the fundamentals of ethical hacking. I just earned my very first certification in pen testing, which is eLearn Security's Junior Penetration Tester certification, and I want to teach you guys the fundamentals of what I've learned. I'm going to continue on with my studies. I've already enrolled in their PTP certification course, and I'm also enrolled in several other courses online and have multiple different books that I've purchased. So as I continue on with this journey and based upon what I've already learned, I want to teach the fundamentals of ethical hacking to get you guys on the same path that I'm on as well. So that's why I'm doing this, and that's the whole purpose of this series. Now, I don't know the entire scope of this series, but just know that we're going to talk about the fundamentals of ethical hacking in this series. You're going to learn some of the theory, you're going to learn how it all works as well, and a lot of it's going to be live demonstrations. So how are we going to kick things off? Well, we're going to kick things off with setting up our lab. So that's going to be what this first episode is all about. It's going to be quite lengthy, but it's necessary. So we're going to use VirtualBox, and we're going to set up 4 different virtual machines. We're going to use our host machine, our attacking machine that's going to attack vulnerable systems, which is going to be Cali. And then we're going to set up 3 different vulnerable machines. We're going to have Metasploitable 2, we're going to have Windows XP, and we're going to have the OWASP Vulnerable Web Apps machine as well. So let's go ahead, let's get started, and let's kick off this series setting up our hacking lab. All right, well, let's go ahead and let's get started. Now, before we start building our lab, we first need to talk about it and talk about the design. So we're going to be utilizing VirtualBox, which is free software, to allow us to create our own virtualized lab. And what you see here on the screen is going to be the design. Now, this is going to emulate a home network design. So what do I mean by that? Well, typically within a home network, we are behind a NAT machine, a network address translation machine, which allows us to connect to the internet. And typically at home, we utilize a SOHO device, which is an all-in-one device, which is going to be our NAT device, our DHCP server, it's going to be our router, it's going to be our switch, all those things combined. And we're going to emulate that in VirtualBox. So what we're going to do is we're going to design what's called a NAT network, where all these devices are on an internal network together, but they also have internet access. And that's typically going to be important for us in this type of a design and environment, specifically for our Cali machine. So let me go and get my highlighter tool, specifically our Cali machine, which is going to be attacking these other machines down here. Sometimes when we go through these labs, we're going to find that not all the time the software works. Sometimes not all the software that we need is there. So we'll need to update it. We'll need to install software and so forth. And having Cali connected to the internet is going to be important for us. Now, these other machines down here, not so much, but our machine that we're going to attack these vulnerable machines with, definitely. So we're going to set up what's called a NAT network in VirtualBox. We're going to install these 4 different virtual machines. We're going to test their connectivity, and we're going to make sure that they're connected to the internet. So with that said, let's get off this PowerPoint and let's jump over to what this is going to look like and all the different files that we need to download. So like I said, we are going to use VirtualBox, and let me go ahead and close out PowerPoint, get that out of the way. So we're going to use VirtualBox, and you'll notice that I have it right here. I'm already on the page. We're going to use this to set up our virtualized lab. So I'm not going to talk about the specifics of how VirtualBox works. If you want to know about that, I'll put a link down below to other videos. So I have a different series, and I'll just pull this up real quick for you. I have a series called Linux Fundamentals for Ethical Hacking on my channel, and on this series and in this series I talk about how to utilize and set up Kali Linux with VirtualBox. I talk about what VirtualBox is and so forth, and then some other things that we're also going to do in setting up our Kali machine. I'll just refer you to other videos that I've already done previously in this other series. And also, if you're not familiar with Kali Linux, I highly recommend that you watch this series here before you jump into this series right here, this ethical hacking, because you need to know the basics of Kali Linux and the commands before you jump into ethical hacking. So with that said, First thing you need to do is you need to download VirtualBox. Now, this is going to work just fine on a Mac or a Windows. The interfaces can be slightly different, but overall it'll work just fine. So you're going to want to go to virtualbox.org, and you're going to want to go to their download page. So here's the URL here. If you go to the main page, just click on the download area, and then you're going to want to download the platform here, either Windows or OS X. And then also what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to download the extension pack. So make sure that you download the extension pack. The link is here as well. This is going to allow us to utilize USB 3.0. I am going to demonstrate, and not only USB 3.0 but 2.0 as well. I'm going to demonstrate, or I plan on demonstrating, hacking into a webcam on my Windows machine, just to give you an idea of why this is kind of a big issue with vulnerable systems, and also protecting our privacy and our children and our home and so forth. So make sure that you download VirtualBox, you install it, and after you install it, download the extension pack. Now, like I said, I go through the process of all that in this other series, so I'm not going to do it. And I also have VirtualBox already installed here on this system that we're going to use. And on here, I actually have multiple different machines. So I have multiple different Windows machines installed, multiple different Cali machines installed, and also some other machines. So I'll give you an idea of everything I already have on here. I am going to walk us through the process of installing some of these machines. Other ones, I'll just refer you to other videos that I've created. But you'll notice that I have 3 different Windows machines already here installed: Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows Server 2016. I have 3 different Cali machines already installed, and I have Metasploitable 2, the OWASP Broken Web Apps, and also Mac Mojave 10.14. We're not going to be utilizing Mac, but I do have this installed here as a virtual machine. So the great thing about VirtualBox is that it allows you to create this virtualized environment and to set up your own lab. So what I need you to do, first thing, is download and install VirtualBox, get that installed, install the extension pack, then go over to, and all the links, like I said, are going to be in the description down below. You're going to go to Offensive Security, and we're going to download the OVA file for Kali Linux. So one of the great things with the VirtualBox is that they have OVA files. You can actually back up a virtual machine and export it to an OVA file, go to a different machine, click on that, and it's going to automate the installation process. So go to their website here, and I didn't mean to click up there on the menu, but you're going to notice it says download Kali Linux virtual images. Scroll down, and this may be minimized, but you want to, so this one may be maximized and this one may be minimized, but you want to go to VirtualBox, and whether you're on a 32-bit or 64-bit system, you're going to want to download the appropriate one. And what it's going to do is it's going to go to your downloads, and let me go ahead and pull up my downloads folder that I already have in place because I've already downloaded these ahead of time. What you're going to see here is that these are going to be OVA files. And 2 of them are going to be OVA files, which is going to make it easy for us to set those up. So download Kali Linux. It's going to be version 2020.3. It's going to be an OVA file. Then download Windows XP, and this is going to be an archive.org. So luckily we have access to old ISO image files of older exploitable and vulnerable Windows operating system. So we're going to install Windows XP Home Edition Service Pack 2. So on this link, you're going to go to the ISO image and download the ISO image. And like I said, here's the URL up here on archive.org. But again, I'm going to put the links down in the description of this video. Next, the next one that you need to download is you need to download the OWASP Broken Web Apps project. And what the Web Apps project is, it's a bunch of vulnerable web apps they have on a virtual machine designed specifically for pen testing and ethical hacking. And luckily they have an OVA file, so you're going to want to download the OVA file from this link. And then once you have that one downloaded, you're going to want to go to the Metasploitable link that I have and click here on download, and it'll download that one as well. And then when you're all done, what you're going to have, and let me pull back up my downloads folder, you're going to have 4 different files. You're going to have the OWASP Broken Web Apps. That one is going to be 2.5 gigabytes. You're going to have Windows XP Home Edition SP2. That's going to be 575 megabytes. And then you're going to have Metasploitable 2, which is going to be 844 megabytes. And then you're going to have Cali Linux, which is going to be just under 3.4 gigabytes. So download all of those, and once you're done, return back to this video. So pause it, download everything. It's going to take some time depending upon the speed of the internet. And then once you're done, come back to here and we'll get things set up. Alright, so once you've downloaded all those files and you've installed VirtualBox and you've also added on the extension pack, you're ready to start installing the virtual machines. And we're going to start with the easiest ones. Now, if you want to know some more details on VirtualBox and all the different settings, like I said, check out my previous video in my other series on going through and setting up VirtualBox. In this video series, I'm just going to assume you know the basics and we're going to go from there. So what we want to do is we're going to start with the OVA files, and we'll start with Cali Linux. We're just going to double click on it, and what you're going to notice is that you're going to get a pop-up. Mine popped up on my other screen. It's going to give you the basic settings to import a virtual machine. Keep everything at its default and click import. And you do have to accept their agreement, and it's going to start importing, and it's going to take probably anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes depending upon the speed of your system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video, and once it's done, what we'll do is we'll go back to the screen, and what you're going to see is that this Cali machine is actually going to show up as a machine that's installed on our system. Alright, so once the import is done, you're going to notice that the machine is here, all set up and ready to go. Now we're not going to do anything just yet. We're just going to continue on with the other machines, and then we'll go back to the settings and we'll do them all at once. So now we're going to do the exact same thing on the OWASP Broken Web Apps. So again, double click that, and once you get that pop-up, do the exact same procedure, hit import, and leave everything at its default. Again, it's going to install on this one as well. This is a smaller machine, so it shouldn't take as long. It's still somewhat on the big side, but it's not as big as Cali. So again, let this one install, and then once this one is done, we are going to do our Metasploitable and our Windows XP. And those ones are going to be our typical installs. They're going to be a bit different. So what we're going to do, I'm going to let this one run. What I'm going to do is with the Metasploitable is I already have this installed on my machine, so I'm not going to reinstall it per se, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So we want to we want to extract these files that are in the zip file. So I'm going to extract them while this one is installing, and for the sake of time, I'm going to do it at the same time. You may just want to wait depending upon your system. What this is going to do, it's going to extract from the zip file the hard drive. So with Metasploitable 2, the hard drive is already set up. So we need to actually start creating a virtual machine, and then we need to point it to this specific file in here, which is this one right here, the VMDK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to place it right here, and I'll get rid of that other folder or couple of folders. So now we have this one extracted from here, and you can either leave it in your downloads. I wouldn't recommend doing it, but I'd recommend moving it over to where your VMs are. So what you want to do now is we have both of these set up. I like to rename this one. This one is just called VM. So let's go into the settings real quick, and let's rename this to OWASP Broken Web Apps. Alright, so now let's set up our Metasploitable 2. So what we need to do is go to Machine, click New. So we're going to add a new machine, and we're going to call it Metasploitable 2, and we're going to leave everything at its default over here, and we're going to click Next, leave that at its default 2 gigs is just fine, and 32 gigs is just fine. Click create, and we want to go back to expert mode, and we want to actually choose existing drive. So what we want to do is we want to use one of these existing drives. So let's actually cancel out of here real quick, and what you're going to notice is if I take this, I'm going to cut this out of here, and I'm going to go to my G drive, which has my VMs. You're going to see that there are quite a bit of machines in here. I want to have this open, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this into here just to show you what I'm doing. You're going to notice I already have it in here, and I'm going to rename this as hard drive number 2 because I already have one Metasploitable 2 in here. And if I go into this one, I want to show you what I'm talking about. If we go into the storage, I'm pointing it to that actual drive itself as the hard drive. So what we want to do is we want to have this set up to go. So I'm going to go back into adding a new machine, and I'm going to call it Metasploitable 2, and I'm going to call it YT for YouTube since it's for the YouTube series. We're going to click next. We're going to click next, and we're going to use an existing drive. So instead of adding one, we're going to choose the drive. So I'm going to click add, and in my G drive, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that actual drive. So if we go to VMs and we have the second hard drive there, we're going to select that, click open, click choose, click create. You're going to notice now that it's showing that drive. We're going to click create, and now this machine is set up to use this drive that I put into here. So now we have 3 different machines. We can start grouping these. I will group them once we're done with the Windows XP. So if I go back down to my downloads folder, now we need to do XP. So we're going to go to machines, we're going to click add new, and we're going to call this Windows XP SP2. And again, this is for my YouTube series, so I'm going to say YouTube since I already have another XP machine in here. We're going to click next. We're going to leave it. Let's actually increase the memory. So I'm going to bump this up to 2 gigs to make the install go a little faster. Leave everything else at its default. And we're going to leave everything else as default. We're going to do VDI. We are going to do dynamically allocated. And we're going to leave this at its default settings here. Click create. And then to install it, we need to go into the settings. So on this machine, click settings. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the storage and we're going to attach this ISO file. So we're going to click over here. We're going to choose an optical disk. We're going to add it and click on downloads, click open, click choose, click OK, and then start this machine up. We need to spin it up, and now we're going to go through the process of installing Windows XP. In mine, of course, loaded up on my other screen. So let me actually tell you, because it won't allow me to continue without actually selecting the ISO. So it's going to ask you to select the startup file from the drop down, pick this Windows XP to home ISO, and click start. And now let me bring it in. So if you do get that, make sure you select that ISO file and then go through the process of setting up Windows XP. So let's go through this process. Again, could take you 10 minutes, could take you a half hour, depending upon your system. So we're going to click enter. We're going to click F8 to accept. We're going to use this 10 gigabytes that we have here. We're going to go to the first option to do a quick NTFS partition and let it begin setting up the formatting. So I'm going to pause the video, and then once this is done, we'll continue. Alright, so what you're going to notice is that once the hard drive partitioning is complete, it's going to start copying the files over. So I'm going to let everything to continue to run, and then once it prompts me for some sort of input, we'll resume with the video. Alright, so it's going to reboot. Don't do anything, don't touch anything, don't press any keys. It's part of the standard process. If you press a button, it's going to go back into that very beginning process and start all over. Just let it run, and it's going to take you into this interface. You're going to notice I only gave it 2 gigs, so it's telling me it's going to take around 40 minutes. So again, just let it run, and then once it prompts me for some sort of input, then we'll continue on. Alright, so the first thing that it's going to ask us for is for our regional and language options. Just keep everything at default myself, but if you want to change anything, feel free to change any of those settings if you're not in the US. So I'm going to click next. For the name, so we're going to call this system, we'll just call it, what I'm going to call the names, we're going to call it admin. And that's for the purpose of having the username be admin, and then the password we're going to set it as admin to make it really exploitable. For the organization, we're just going to leave it blank if it allows us to. And the computer name, we'll just call it Windows XP. And again, that allows us to get easy information regarding this system. Click next. I'm going to click next and allow it to continue installing. Now for TCP/IP, if I can talk right, keep everything at its standard settings. Click next again, and again let it continue to install the system. So you're going to notice that this is moving fairly quickly. It does say 23 minutes, but for me, everything is moving along a lot faster than what it's actually saying here. So again, I'm going to pause the video and I'll resume once it asks me for more input. Alright, so Windows is going to do another reboot. Again, don't touch anything. Let it continue on. Once everything's finalized, I'll show you how to remove the ISO file. And we are at the ending stages of getting this install completed. Click OK. Click OK again, and allow it to continue on in finalizing the setup. So what I didn't do is what I didn't tell you earlier is an ISO file is essentially it's a digital version of a CD or a DVD. And so when we loaded this up, it looks at that as a CD. And so now we're at the beginning. Just click next to finalize this. We're not going to turn on automatic updates. It's not going to work anyways because Windows XP is no longer supported, but we want to keep them disabled. We're going to click next. And we're going to skip this section right here where it's checking for internet connectivity. We don't want to register the system. And we're going to call the user, admin. And we'll click finish. And it's going to log us in for the first time. And a couple of different things that I want to do in here is I want to search for, and actually we don't even have to search, so let's go to the start menu, let's go to control panel, let's switch to classic view, let's go to Windows Firewall, and let's turn it off. Again, makes this more exploitable. And then go to user accounts, and looks like I got a bit of an error right there, but I'm into user accounts now. We're going to go ahead, we're going to go to the admin account, we're going to create a password, and we're going to call the password, we're going to call it admin. And we'll just do all lowercase. Create the password. Do we want to make our files and folders private? We'll just say yes, and we'll close out of that. We're going to go into the devices, go to optical, and we're going to remove the disk from the virtual drive, so it's going to end up removing this ISO file. And then we're going to go back to devices, and we're going to click Insert Guest Editions CD. This is not required, but it's always nice to have this installed. I set this up on all my Windows virtual machines just because it allows you to scroll these into different sizes. So click Next, click Install. If you don't have it installed, what you're going to notice is that it always stays one size, and you have things like that. But once we get it installed, we can make these whatever size that we want. So just click Continue anyways with all that. and go ahead and reboot the system. And we just want to check that everything took effect with that. Now we are done with all of these here. So I can close out the downloads folder. Let's put this over here. And while this machine is booting up, and it actually booted up really quick, so we'll go back to admin. And once it's fully loaded, what you're going to notice is that everything resizes nicely. So what I'd like you to do is go to machine and click take snapshot and type in clean install. And this is just good habit when you're setting up a lab. That way you can revert back to the snapshots whenever you make any changes. So we're going to do our clean install. And then once that's fully completed, it looks like the system kind of froze while it's doing it. We'll just let that run. And it looks like I might have froze up the system a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with it. But we're going to take a snapshot of all the other machines. So we'll do a clean install for all the other ones. And let's see if it allows us to get back in. I'm going to make it full screen. It looks like something is going on with the menu bar. So we'll go to input and we'll do insert alt control delete. Take a look at the processes and everything. Looks like it might have froze on my end, so I'm going to go ahead and power it off and just start it back up just to make sure that everything is okay with it. Now while that's happening, what I do want to do is set up a network for us to test all these on. So while this one is booting up, and went ahead and booted up again really quick, so let's go into here and let's make sure that everything works fine with the start menu now. So it looks like just took a while for everything to boot up, running kind of slow with only 2 gigs of RAM on the system. But it looks like the system is there. What we can do to make this run a little faster is we can right click, go to properties. We can go to desktop, customize the desktop. I'm just going to click all of these, but what we need to do is we need to right click on my computer, go to properties, click on advanced, click on performance, and say adjust for best performance. And that'll allow this to run a little faster. And I can also, I don't need the sound, so I can go ahead and mute it. And we can go ahead and take another screenshot, and I'll show you how these work. Allow that snapshot to take, but what you're going to notice here for the YouTube machine is we have the clean install and we have adjusted for best performance, and we can actually, I can go back between both of these if I want. So let's turn this machine off now, and what I want to do is on these machines, you'll notice that this is actually broken in with the other ones. What I want to do with the 4 that we just created is I want to group these together. And we have a new group, and what I'm going to do is rename it and call it Ethical Hacking for Beginners, so I know that these 4 are grouped together. So that way you can install more than one virtual machine. Now what we need to do is we need to set up our NAT network and switch all these over to that NAT network. So we go to File, and we go to Preferences, we go to Network, and these are NAT networks. And I already have one created here, but you're going to want to create your own. Let's go ahead and let me make this full screen since I'm not using the other half of the screen anymore. So let me go back to Preferences, and in here go to Network. I have one created for my other machines. I'm going to create a different NAT network. So click on Add New NAT Network. This one's called NAT Network 1, and I'm going to call it, for me, I'm going to call it YouTube _NAT network, And we're going to put this on a 192, and it helps if I have my numlock on. We're going to put this on a 192.168.0.0 network, and we'll leave DHCP on. We'll click OK, and you're going to notice that it says renamed from that. So what we can do now is click OK. Now we need to go into these 4 machines and put them onto that NAT network. So we'll start with Metasploitable, go to Settings, and in Settings we're going to go down to Network. We're going to switch this over to a NAT network, and then we're going to choose the one that we created, which is a YouTube NAT network. Now, while we're in here, we can take a look at some other things. If you do want to change some of the settings, I always recommend taking a look at everything. One thing I like is setting up the shared clipboard and drag and drop. It's not going to work for every machine, but it does allow us to cut and paste from other machines into other ones. So I like setting those up on everything. And for the system, in terms of the memory, if you want to bump up the memory or reduce it, take count of all the memory that you have for your system, so you can increase these and decrease these a bit. The ones that we really want to focus on is really our Cali machine. These other ones we can keep them at default. And then for the processor, you can leave it at 1 or 2. Again, I think leaving everything at default for the machines that we're just going to start up and exploit, leave them at the default settings is fine. But if we want to bump up the performance, it's more so going to be our Cali machine. So let's go to our Windows XP machine. We're going to go to the settings, we're going to go to network, we're going to choose NAT network, and then we're going to choose the one we created. I called it YouTube_NAT network. And again, I'm going to leave this at default with everything, except I am going to go to general and advanced and enable bidirectional for everything. Hit OK, and then we'll go to Cali, we'll go to settings, again, go to network, change it to NAT network and the YouTube NAT network. Go to general and advanced, make sure everything is set for bidirectional, which it is for this one. And then for this one, I want to bump up the memory and the RAM just because this is the one that we're going to be working on. So for this one, because I have a lot of memory on my system, I'm going to bump it up to 8 gigs, and I'm going to give this 4 different cores on my system. And for the display, I think everything is fine with here. I don't need to enable 3D acceleration, so mainly just the network and the system with the processor, the memory, and bidirectional here. And then we'll go to OWASP Broken Web Apps, we'll go to settings, we'll go to advanced, make this bidirectional as well, we'll go to network, and we will do our NAT network, which is the YouTube NAT network. Now they are all 4 of them are set up on that NAT network, and what we can do is we can take another snapshot for each of them, but we'll do this after we start them up. So let me go ahead and reduce my speaker noise so you guys don't have all the background. But what we're going to do is we're going to start them up. So we're going to start Metasploitable 2 up, and I'm going to bring that over here. We're going to start up our Windows XP. Now, as you're starting all these up, make sure that you take note of the accumulative amount of RAM that you're using on your system, because you want to make sure that your host machine does have enough RAM. So make sure that if you're on a system that only has, let's say, 16 gigs of RAM, that you're still leaving something like 6 or 8 gigs for your host system itself. So if you had 16 gigs of RAM, maybe 2 to Metasploitable, 1 to Windows XP, 2 to OWASP, and then anywhere from 2 to 4 for Cali. So that would leave you 2, 3, 4, 5, plus maybe 4 more would leave around 9, and then you would have about 5 for the host system as well. So always think about the amount of RAM that you're going to be using and how much is left over. So let's go ahead and let's start up the OWASP Web Apps as well. Going to go ahead and start up this one down here as well, and then we'll go ahead and start up Cali. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize my VirtualBox manager. And what we can do is, I know that these aren't really tiled perfectly and nicely, but what we can do is on the Windows machine. We'll go to Run. We'll do a CMD to open up command prompt, and we'll do an ipconfig to give us our IP address. So you'll notice we have a 192.168.0.5 IP address. Metasploitable, the login is msfadmin for the username and password, which is shows directly on the screen. And we'll do an ifconfig. Again, if you don't know what these commands are on Linux, make sure you watch my other series that goes through Linux fundamentals and the different commands. And if we take a look at the Ethernet interface, which is the one that we want to look at, our address is 192.168.0.4. And let me go ahead and get my highlighter. So we're talking about right here. So both of these are on our NAT network with those IP addresses. We're going to go to our OWASP Broken Web Apps. And again, the username and password is listed right here as well. I'll get my highlighter out. Username is root, and the password is OWASPBWA. So we're going to go ahead and log in, root, and OWASPBWA. And it gives us the IP address. We don't need to do an ifconfig. It shows us that the IP address is 192.168.0.6. Now, if you go into the system and you can't get out of it for some reason, always just do a right click. So sometimes we run into those issues with some of these systems, whether it be the OWASP or the Metasploitable 2, because we're not installing the VirtualBox add-ons onto it. So just right click and it'll get you out of the system. But I'll go into it, and just to confirm, we will do an ifconfig, which shows you that IP address. And lastly, we're going to go into Cali, and the username and password is Cali and Cali. And this will eventually boot up. And let me go ahead and make this one a bit bigger. And we'll go to terminal, we'll do an ifconfig. And of course I need to do a sudo ifconfig because we're not logged in as root. Asks us for the password for Cali, and we are on a 192.168.0.7. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the Windows machine. I'm going to ping the Cali machine. And it might help if I can type properly. I didn't have numlock set or turned off on me, so we'll do ipconfig 192.168.0.7. And it could actually help if I knew what I was doing. So we're going to ping it. We're not doing an ipconfig. 192.168.0.7. I guess it's been a long day for me. If we get a reply, it means that we're communicating with this device. We can go up to here when the Metasploitable, and we can ping it as well. And for some reason, as I go from one device to another on my keyboard, it's turning off my numlock. So we're going to ping it from Metasploitable, and we get a reply, so we can do Control-C to stop pinging it. And then we'll go to the OWASP Broken Web Apps, and again, we'll ping it. We get a reply, and we do Control-C to stop that. So now we know that we can communicate with all of them, and again, do a right control on your keyboard if you get stuck in there. And what we can do over here is we can open up a browser. So let's pop open a browser, and let's see what happens if we type in our IP address of 192.168.0.6, which I believe is the IP of this system. Let's clear out the screen and let's do our ifconfig again. It is a .6. And this is going to be our OWASP Broken Web Apps. So we do have access to that. I do want to take a screenshot of that. So let's go ahead and let's make this full screen. let's add in our menu bar and let's bookmark this page, and I'll put it on the toolbar so I have it there, and that way we can go directly to here whenever we want to do any web vulnerability assessments or pen testing on this machine. So now I want to do is simply take a snapshot. So I'm going to say, just going to say NAT network connected on each of them. And we're almost done with setting up our lab. And I say almost done because we're not entirely 100% done. And I don't know why my back arrow isn't working, so we'll turn that machine off and then we'll take a snapshot. And for some reason it's not working on both of these, so let's shut both of these machines down and we'll take a screenshot that way. And this one, and I'll just shut both of those machines down. I'll go back over to here and we'll take a snapshot from in here. And I don't know why my keyboard is acting up. So I'm not going to be able to take a snapshot just yet. Once we get to the recovery menu, we can power off that machine. And on this machine, we can do shut down now and tell it to shut down as well. For some reason my system is kind of bugging out, but you should be able to take a snapshot with all of these. Not really sure why my keyboard's not allowing me to do an input. So let's shut down this machine and see if for some reason I'm having issues, and we can go ahead, once we get to this menu, we can go ahead and power off this machine. Let's see if we can take a snapshot again. These are the issues that you run into time to time when you're setting these things up. So now with all of them off, let's see if my keyboard allows me to do it. Now it allows me to do it. Something with all three of them on didn't want to allow me to take all those different snapshots. Is what it is, but this is free software and don't expect it to work 100% all the time. So now we have all the machines set up on their own internal NAT network. We have our snapshots taken. We do need to go back into Cali, and in Cali I want you to set up, and let me actually pull in these series over here. I want you to set up the root user account. So with the root user account, there are a few different commands that you have to do. It's actually just a couple of commands. So I'm going to go ahead because I already have this typed up and written over here on the other machine, but we're going to go ahead and let the machine boot up, and I'll pull in those commands for you in 1 second. Alright, here we go. I just wanted to do it directly from there so I didn't have to retype them, but what we need to do is log into Cali. And the reason that we're doing this is because on Cali version 2020, it doesn't create and set up a root super user account. When you log in with Cali and the password, the default password is Cali, this is a standard user account. If we want to do pen testing, we need to have root level, which is administrative level account access to everything. If we don't set up root, we have to type in the sudo, which is a super user do command every single time, and it's just easier if you log in with root. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up terminal, and we're just going to simply input these different commands. We're going to do sudo su. It's going to ask us the password for Cali, which is Cali, and then we're going to type in the command password root. So we're essentially saying we want to set the password for the root account, and I'm just going to make it TOR, which is Tor, which is root backwards, which is the standard password for root on older versions of Cali, just to keep it simple. And now we've set our password for root, and what we can do is we can go ahead and we can log out, and we can log in as root. Now we are logged in with root, and if you remember from earlier, when I tried to do an ifconfig, it wouldn't let me. It told me that I needed to put in the sudo because I'm not a root user. Now I can do it because I'm logged in with the super user account, which is the root account. So all these commands I couldn't do before, now I can do. And I apologize, I had to pause the video because the battery on my light went out that I use for recording. But we're pretty much done. So what we want to do is we want to take another snapshot. So we're going to say, I'm just going to simply say root account setup. That way we can log in with root, and that way we know. If you don't like this IDE interface, I do have a video on the other series on changing it to GNOME. So with version 2019, that's what I use, and I may actually switch this over to GNOME. I'm not sure yet, but this video here shows you how to do it. I'm not going to walk you through the process here, but you can do it if you want to. So it's really up to you. But anyways, we are set up with all the machines. I'm going to go ahead and shut this machine down. We'll pull this back in. We don't need this anymore, so I'll go ahead and get rid of that over there. But like I said, we've set up our lab. So we have our 4 different machines set up. They're on their own internal network. Like I said, this video was going to be on the longer side because it takes time. But our internal testing lab is set up to start doing some pen testing and ethical hacking. So again, that's going to conclude this lengthy episode number 1 for the series. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe as well. And I'll see you guys at the next video. Take care. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you guys at future videos. Take care.